Okay guys, welcome back to the SSAS training sessions. In last session we discussed about storage modes, different types of storage modes and which suits better for what kind of requirement. In this session, let's discuss about calculations. So calculations is very important concept in analysis services. So creating or designing the rest of the cube is one story, but creating the calculations is the other one. To create calculations, you need to know MDX. You need to be good in MDX because we use MDX scripts to create the or to write the expression in the calculations. So the calculations in the cube are more like named calculations which we create in data source view. If you see data source view, we'll be creating the calculation column, new named calculations, right? If you take a table, here you can see new named calculation and you can give some name and you can give some expression sales amount plus tax amount. Sorry. So what it will do is it will execute the, it will add these two column values, and when you explore the data it will give you the result of the sum of these two values, that are sales amount and the tax amount. If you see at the end, the test is giving you the sales amount plus tax amount value. So this is called named calculation and it is at the data source view level. And if you see the other one, the calculated member, this is at the cube level, but there are a lot of differences. Let's discuss about the differences first. The first and foremost difference is the one which you create in the data source view level executes at the row level information or pre-processed data. This is not processed data. This is pre-processed data which is coming from database as is. So it executes the calculated member, or it executes the calculation on the pre-processed data. Whereas if you create a calculated member in the cube, then it will be executed or it will be evaluated in the on the processed data. Here if you see, the measures will be calculated or processed, dimensions will be processed by the time you execute the MDX calculated member. So that is the major difference. So that is on raw data or pre-processed data, whereas this is on processed data. And the second difference is this executes at the time of cube processing. So at the time of cube processing, it will execute this column and it will get the data and it will store the data in the cube. But the calculated member on the other side, this executes at the time of MDX query triggering or MDX query execution. When you trigger an MDX query which uses the calculated member that you have created here, then it will evaluate the value. Then it will return the value to the calling environment or from the client where you triggered the MDX query. So that's the second difference. And the third one is, as this executes at the time of processing, the processing time will be a little slower. I mean, it takes more time to process the cube. Let's say you have many calculations in the data source view level, and let's say 100 or 150 complex calculations. Then it takes a lot of time because it has to execute or evaluate everything at the time of processing. On the other side, the calculated member evaluates or executes at the time of query execution. So the query performance will be poor compared to the processing performance. Processing performance will be better because let's assume you have 1,000 calculations defined here. None of the calculations will be evaluated, and the data will not be stored at the time of processing. It evaluates only at the time of query execution. If you use that calculated member in your MDX, then only it will be evaluated. That is why the query performance will be little slow or little poor, whereas if you have more and more named calculations, then the processing time will be more than normal. So the processing performance will be poor. And the fourth difference is, as this is pre-processed, at the time of processing time, this value will be calculated, right? So if you use this named calculation in your MDX, it will be very fast. Okay, so the performance will be good if you use this because the data is pre-processed at the time. Sorry, sorry, at the time of processing of the queue. Whereas here, the the query performance will be slow, but the processing will be fast if you have more and more and more calculated members than named calculations in the data source view. And if you see here, you can use lot of measures and attributes to create a calculation, but here you have to hardly use the columns from the table to create the calculation. So named calculation. And the last difference is here, this is good for only small calculations, not for huge calculations or complex calculations, because it's very difficult to write complex calculations at the leaf level data or pre-processed data. But here you can write very complex calculations with ease. It's very easy to write complex calculations at the calculated member level. So that is why people prefer to have calculations. The major advantage when people ask you like why you are going with the cube database, why you are designing the cube database in between in SQL Server, underlying data warehouse and the report design. There are two main reasons. The first one is the performance will be improved, which you know, because it processes the data and it stores the aggregations and everything. And the second main thing is the complex calculations to meet the requirements. If there are any complex calculations, which is very difficult to maintain in a relational database, people prefer to go ahead with cube design. And one of my databases, I created more than 450 calculations in one single cube. So the requirement was so complex, and that is why we added an extra layer called SSAS project, and we created all the calculations to meet the requirements. That would have been very, very difficult without SSAS, and if they asked us to design all the calculations in the relational database. So let's see how to create the calculations here. This calculate is the must one. If you take out this calculate, the processing will fail. Or if you see, let me show you that I removed the calculate one. If I try to process it, it's throwing error. So why? Because this is the one which says that from here onwards, this is calculated members. These are the calculations, and this is a hint to analysis services. So that's the starting or the keyword which it uses to identify the start of the calculations. Okay, now let me process it by adding the calculate. Now it is processing fine. So make sure the calculate is there, and if you remove it by mistake, then it will fail. So be careful while working on that. Okay, now for creating new calculations, you have to use this button, new calculator member. Click on this, and first thing what you have to give is like the name of the calculation, profit, and to which it belongs to. It belongs to the measures, fine. And what is the expression of profit? How do you calculate the profit? The profit is basically the sales amount minus the total product cost plus tax amount plus freight amount. So this is the this is the total cost of the product and the sales amount. This minus this will give you the profit. So if you these are the two minimum things that you have to give for creating a calculation. And if you see the expression whatever we have given here, this is nothing but MDX. Okay, and if you want to see the script mode, this is the form mode. Here you can see form view, right? If you want to see the script view, click on this. Here you can see the calculation created, and it is in MDX. So create calculator, create member current cube dot measures dot profit. This is the name, and this is the expression, and when you use this calculated number, this expression will be evaluated. And visibility set to 1, that means visibility set to true. And remember these calculations, if you create any calculation, and nothing will be happen at the processing time, right? It just take and stores these expressions in the analysis services. It won't be executed or evaluated at the time of processing. So you don't need to process the whole cube when you modify or when you add a calculation. Now I have added a calculation, right? So I'm just deploying the database. So I deployed it, I'm not processing it, and let me reconnect it here. You can see the profit added to the list of measures. And let me take sales amount too. And if I take the color or some attribute, then it will give the information based on that attribute. So this is the profit for the black color, this is the blue color profit, and this is the multicolor profit, and so on. So this is how you can create calculations. Now let's see the different formats, the different options that we have here. So the additional properties, you can see the format string, which is very important. If you see the data, it is coming like 5 to 10 decimal values. So you can format the data. Now this is amount, right? The profit is an amount. So I can select either currency or this value. This is the name of the format, and this is the representation of the format. If you see, this 0 means there will be no decimal values. Here standard is equal to this one, which if you select either standard or this one, it will go with 2 decimal values. And currency and this one is same. So if you select these two, then it will be adding dollar sign to the value, and it will limit the 2 decimal values. Similarly, percentage and the date and so on. Let me go ahead with currency, and this is the property to show to select, I mean, whether you want to show this whether you want to make this visible to the users or make it invisible. Let me keep it as true. And non-empty behavior is one important property. Like if you have any particular measure which will decide the calculation expression. For example, you have 4 measures here: sales amount, total product cost, total tax amount, and freight amount. Now your result set has 10 rows, like black, blue, multi, gray, green, orange, red, and so on. So let's say this is the tax amount, sales amount, product cost, freight amount, and this is the profit, the calculation that you have created. Now if you select, let's say, total product cost here for non-empty behavior, in that case, if the total product cost is empty or null for any of the rows, let's say it is null for this row, then it won't calculate this expression. What it will do is it will place null by default. So if you want to tell the server not to calculate the expression or this member when a particular measure is null, then you need to select that in the non-empty behavior. Let's say even this is null, then this will be placed null by default without calculating it. It saves time without calculating the value further. And let's say this has some value 1 2 3 4 5, then it will calculate and it will place the value. If it is null, then it will directly place null without calculating. So it is giving a hint to the server about what are the rows that it doesn't require to calculate, because one of the measure is null, or one of the measure which is important to be having value is null. So non-empty behavior helps in improving the performance if you have lots and lots of attribute members, and let's say your dimension attribute has 20 million distinct records. And if you have that in your query, and you will be getting a lot of null values for few measures like tax amount, or in real time, let's take some XYZ measure. And if your calculated measure which you have created is dependent on that XYZ measure, then you better give it as non-empty behavior. And the non-empty behavior, if that is null, then it won't calculate the calculated member. It will by default place null in the place of a calculated member wherever it is null for the measure XYZ. So this is very important property to improve the performance. So non-empty behavior, in this case, let me go with total product cost. If the total product cost is null, then it won't calculate the expression. It will just place null under the profit. And the next one is, if you have multiple measure groups, then it is asking you to select the measure group to which it has to associate this particular calculated member. So I have only one, so let me select fact internet sales. If I don't select fact internet sales, then it will be placed under measures. If I select fact internet sales, then this calculator measure will be added to the fact internet sales. And if you want to group all the calculations, you can have a name called calculations. What it will do is it will create a folder, and here you can use something like expressions. If measures, this is again mdx dot profit is greater than 30,000, comma, I think you can give color red, else yellow, or I think you can pick color from here too. Let me select yellow. Okay, this is for yellow, and let me select for red also. So this is for 4 colors. Similarly, I can give for oops, something wrong. I think it copied it in the wrong position. Let me do it again for red. So red should be here. Okay, it is copying at the end. Let me take it out and let me copy in the if condition. Okay, now let me take this and let me give it for background too. And in the background, I'll give like this, Control X, so the colors are opposite. Okay, now I've given some foreground color and background color based on the profit value. If it is greater than 30,000, I think I've given bigger one. I think this is 30,000. Now let me process it, or let me deploy it, and you can't see this currency formatting and all in the browser that we have here. Instead, we can try it in by connecting to Excel. So if you go to the browser, you can reconnect it, and you can connect to the Excel. Before 2012, there was a different browser, and that was able to show the color differences and the folder information and so on. So if you see fact internet sales measure group, there will be a folder created with the name calculations, because we have given calculations, and if I select the profit, it will be selected, and you can see the value is bigger than 30,000, and hence the fore color is in red and the background color is in yellow. And now let me select color from the product. So if I select color, oops, I better scroll okay into the rows. You can see multi, it is less than 30,000, and you can see the color is opposite. The background is red and foreground is yellow. Similarly, for the other colors which are having more than 30,000, you can see the background is yellow and the foreground is red. That is how I define the expression. If I select English product name, you can see a lot of different combinations. So this is how you can make use of the expressions, the additional properties, to provide different color combinations. Similarly, you can select font expressions, the same expression like font name, font size, and font flags. If you want to select anything, you can you will also get the options from here to select for if and else. Okay, this is the font style and font size, everything. So if you say, this is how you can create the calculations. This is one calculation I created. Now if I want to create one more calculation, what I can do is simply take this guy. If you want to set the same properties, I mean to say, and paste it here, and give, let's say, profit margin. So profit margin is the new calculation. I copied the same properties, and you can see profit margin is taken, and it's the same expression too. But for profit margin, the expression is divided by sales amount again. So I'm calculating the margin. So to calculate the margin, you have to go for profit divided by sales amount. Now this is profit margin, and let me go with a standard value with 2 decimals. I can go with a percentage also. For now, let me go with standard value, and here I better need to change the value because it will be like under 10 always. You are calculating the profit margin, right? It will be very less in number, so I'll take it as 0.3, and here also 0.3. Now let me process this, let me deploy this, and let me see whether this calculation will be calculated number will be added to the list of calculations in the fact internet sales. So let me close, and you need to come here and refresh it. And if you go back to the fact internet sales calculations, here it is. You should be able to see profit margin too. You can see the profit margin is 0.3187 and so on. Here for the second one, it is 0.5. So everything is above 0.3. I think it is not above 0.3, but still it is showing in this color. We need to find out why it is not giving proper colors. Should be something with the formatting here. I'm going for profit here. I should go for profit margin. So profit is different, right? Profit will be always greater than 0.3. That was the problem. So let me quickly deploy it and refresh it over there to see the difference, how it looks when the color coding is properly applied. So run, close, and refresh it, and you can see it changed automatically. So this is how you can make use, or you can create calculations, and it's very easy to create the calculations in analysis server side. And these are pretty simple calculations, and you can create complex calculations with ease in analysis server. Now let me take out this color. Okay, now let me do one thing. This is the calculations, and once we discussed about MDS, we can revisit the calculations page to create more and more calculations. And let's see about KPI. Before going to the KPIs, let's see, we have few more things here. The first one is new named set. This new named set is like, right? You will have a dimension, and the dimension will have attributes. Attributes are nothing but the columns, right? And attributes will have members. What are the members for the year, attribute calendar year? It is 2001, 2002, 2003, and so on to 2015 are the members of it. So you can have multiple members or collection of multiple members of same hierarchy. We call it as a set. So here you can define a set, and you can provide the access to this set to the user, so that users will call this set, and they'll see the data. I'll show you an example first, then you can easily understand. Years. So I'm creating a set with the name years. So here what I'm doing is I'm collecting 3-4 standard or fixed years from the due date dimension. So let me go to due date dimension. Let me reconnect it, and calendar year, I'm taking members 2007, 2008 and 2009. So these are fixed members. So whenever users drag and drop this year's named set from the hierarchy, then people can see only these 3 years information. And these 3 years are static in information. There is nothing dynamic. This will not be changed dynamically. And let me have a folder sets. And if I process it, let me show you first. Then you'll get a clear understanding about what is set. I'm processing it. Sorry, I'm deploying it. Again, you just need to deploy here, and let me refresh it, and let me go to due date. You should be able to see some folder called sets, and before that, let me take out this. And if I oops, English product name, I'm taking it out. And if you see, if I select the years, there is no data for the years. I mean the years that I selected year 2007, 8, 9, right? So there is no data. Let me go to pivot table options, tools, and the display. One second. Show items with no data. If you see here, these are the 3 years I selected, and these 3 years are not having any data. So the set is nothing but the collection of members, a collection of members from the same hierarchy. So what we will be doing is we'll be creating a static set or a dynamic set, and we will give it to the users. Users will be using the same information. Okay, so now let's talk about the nowadays people are not using the static static set very frequently, but people are using the dynamic set. Let me show you an example for the dynamic set. So let's say user want to see current year or last year data or closing year. So what is the year that has the data? Closing year. So the closing year, for getting the last year in the calendar year attribute, if you see what is the last one, the last one is 2014. There is a function called closing period. So in the closing period, if you define that, if you give this attribute, then it always get the last member. I'm sorry guys, I selected the calculated member instead of set. Okay, let me take this out and let me select the set, and let me give the name closing period, closing year, and I'm giving the same function closing period for the calendar year attribute from the high dimension due date, and I'm setting it as dynamic, and let me copy it to sets. Now if I deploy it and if I try to browse this particular set in the Excel, then it will give the last member that is available in the attribute that we have used. Let me refresh it. Okay, now let me go to due date and let me see the sets, and there is a closing year. If you see here, the closing year, these two are from the same attribute set, so one has been taken out and the closing year is selected and it is giving 2014 information. Similarly, you can select last year. So users want to see most of the cases the closing year or closing month or current month information, last month information, and so on. So you can use the functions to dynamically generate the set of members. Or sometimes users want to see top 3 products. They don't know what are those 3 products, top 3 sales product. You can create a set, dynamic set, and it will pull only top 3 products with highest sales. You can create the sets. You can use the dynamic sets for all this kind of grouping members dynamically, and this is most frequently used one. Like even in my current project, I'm using something like current month and previous month. So when user drag the current month, whatever the month he is in, that month information will be displayed. If he selects last month, last month information will be displayed. So this is about the sets in the calculations page. You can create n number of sets and make sure these sets are valid and these sets are useful. Don't create sets just like that. And the third one is, before going to the third one, let me go to the script view and I'm copying everything and I'm going back to the form view. Here you can see a new script command. The new script command is like, you can, if you have a list of what you say, um, calculations and sets defined in a notepad or copied from a different place, you can take the script command here and you can add everything, but make sure you will give a different name, because all these names are already used by other calculations, right? Profit margin 1, profit 1, and for the set I'll give the name as years 1 and closing years 1. So if you see here now, let me go to the script view and everything is fine except this extra column. Now if I go to the form view, you can see everything is added, like calculations and sets. These are the default ones. The top ones are the one which we created, and the bottom ones, if you see from here, profit 1, profit margin 1, years 1, and go. Instead of creating manually, if you have the things in the script, you can copy it in the script command and you can see all the data. This is one advantage of this one. So now let me delete it for now because we already have a similar calculations and set. So this is about creating calculations and using the script command and also using the named set, and you can also create dynamic as well as static named set. So now let's jump into the concept KPIs and we will revisit these calculations if time permits after learning MDX queries. So the KPIs talks about the key performances. These are like an indicator to the performance of a particular product or particular business. So let's see, if you want to rate a player, like how a player is performing or how Virat Kohli is performing, what you'll be doing is you will take the current value, what is the value, how many runs he scored this year, and you'll compare with a goal, like uh, a person is called as a good batsman if he score at least like 5,000 runs in a calendar year. So that is the goal you set for the good batsman, or let's say an average of 50 runs. So the goal here is average of 50 runs, right? So that is the goal, and the value is the runs that he scored. You will compare and you will say whether he is a good player or not. Similarly, if you take a class of students, the goal you will be setting is the rank 1, and the value will be like all the children, all the students ranks, and you'll be comparing with the rank 1. Who score rank 1 or 2 are good students, bright students, and 3 to 5 are good, 5 to 7 are average, 7 and above are poor, something like that. You will be having a goal, you will be setting a goal, and you will be having a value, and you will be comparing and creating the key performance indicators. Similarly, here if you go for key performance indicator, you need to set the value expression and you need to set the goal expression and you need to set the status expression and finally trend expression. Trend expression will help in comparing current year's performance with the previous year, how it is performing, how a product is performing over a period of time. But this is for current value comparison by setting the goal. So the status expression takes the help of value expression and the goal, whereas trend expression doesn't require the goal, but it will compare with the previous year values or previous month values. It basically checks over a period of time. Now I need one dimension for this, that is sales territory. Let me add the dimension to the cube. For that, I don't have the table added to my data source view. Let me add the table sales territory. Dim sales territory. Let me see. Let me find out. Okay, it's already added. This table is already available in the data source view. That is good. Now let me create a dimension for the sales territory table, dimension table. Sales territory, and I'm in a region. country and group. I don't need the image. And let me give the name as sales territory and finish. So the dimension is created. Let me add the dimension to the cube. Oops, I should be in the cube structure. So add cube dimension, sales territory, and now let me quickly process it and keep it ready for using in my KPIs. Okay, process successfully. And now let me go ahead with a new KPI. I'll give this name KPI as pro margin. Okay, and the value expression is the value that you want to compare. So for now, let's say I want to compare the value profit margin. So I'll compare the profit margin with the goal expression I set. So I'll be setting a goal like a 0.30. This is the goal. Let's say at least if it is 0.30, then it is if it is 0.30, the profit margin for any region or any country, then it is performing good. If the goal, if the profit margin is less than 0.3 but very close to 0.3, let's say 90% of 0.3, then it is performing okay. And if it is less than 0.3 and it is too less than, like let's say it is half percent less than 0.3, then if it is not nearby to the goal, then it is performing poor. So I'm setting a goal. This is called a static goal value. The static goal value will not work because let's say you are working on a product, supermarket products. You cannot set the goal like if a product sales is more than 50 lakh Indian rupees, then the product is performing good. That is not the goal you can set because there are few products which cost only 1 rupee, and to reach the goal you have to sell 50 lakh such products, right? And on the other side, there'll be, let's say, refrigerators or air coolers, which will be 20,000 or 50,000 in cost. Even iPhones, which cost 80,000, right? You just need to say sell 50 to 8, 100 to 120 to reach the goal. So if you see the difference, you may need to set a different goal for different regions, different goal for different products, and so on. So let me set the goal for different regions. If I go to the sales territory, which I have added, the dimension which I have added. Okay, let me reconnect it. And sales territory group. I have 4 different regions. One is not applicable. That means no region is given. And the remaining things are Europe, North America, and Pacific. Let me create a case statement. Territory group dot member is Europe. Then I'll set goal of 0.30 for Europe. Now I'll repeat the same for North America and Pacific. When it is North America, this is MDX. Don't try to understand the MDX at this point of time. Just try to understand the concept. Then the goal is 0.32, and when it is Pacific, then it is let's say 36 or 34. And all the else goal is 0.25. And then this is an expression in MDX expression which uses the case statement. And if you see that in Notepad, it is more like case 1. When the current member is Europe, then the goal is 0.30. When the current member is North America, then that means when the user selected North America, then the goal is this much. When the user select Pacific, then the goal is this much. Similarly, when the user select any country from the Pacific region, then the goal is 0.36%, like we have given here. Now this is the set. This is how we can set the goal. Different goals for different reasons we set. And now the indicator, you need to select how you want to show. Let me select the traffic light and let me write the expression. Here you'll be writing the expression, and the same place you'll be using pro margin, the name of the KPI in the expression. So the expression what I'm giving here is case 1. There is a function called KPI value. If you give the name of the KPI, it takes the value, that is the profit margin, divided by KPI goal of the same KPI is greater than 0.9. That means close to 90%, 90% and above. Then I'll put it as 1. That means it is performing good. So when you write the status expression, you can give only three values: 1, 0, minus 1. 1 means it is good, 0 means it is average, and minus 1 means it is poor. Now if I divide it by these to this into 100, that means the percentage, then I can check with 90. So if it is greater than 90%, that means my value is reaching 90%, right? So then I can say the profit is, I mean the it's close to the goal. Similarly, let me copy this, and if it is greater than 70%, then it is 0. Else, if it is less than 70% or 0, whatever it is, then I'll say it as minus 1. That means it is not performing good. It is performing poor. How to calculate the percentage? Is it goal by value or value by goal? I'm not sure about that. I'm poor in math. So let's say value by goal. Now this value by goal is greater than 90%, into 100 is greater than 90%, then that is performing good, then it will be shown in the green color light. And the other cases, like if it is greater than 90 and less, greater than 70 and less than 90, it is average, and less than 70, it is poor. Now what you need to do is, let me quickly process it and let's see how the data will be shown, how the indicator will be shown in the browser. So let me quickly process it. I don't need to process, I think, but let me do that. So if you go to the browser, you can see it is showing green for the overall profit margin. The value is 31, and it is not in Pacific, it is not in Europe, it is not in, this is the overall, right? Now let me select the region, sales territory, right? If I select the sales territory and the group and equals to, I can select any one region. Let me select Europe. Click on OK, and you can see this is the value and this is the goal set, which is very close to 90%, right? So that is why it is showing in green color. Let me select North America, how it is performing for the North America. The value, oh sorry, it's not applicable, there is no value for that, that's why it is showing blank. Let me go to North America, and the value is 31, the goal is 32, and it is perfect, it is also in green. Let's see the last one, Pacific. If you see here, the value is 30 and the goal is 36. It is between 70% and the 90% of the value. That is why it is showing in yellow. And if you want to see the red light, what we can do is we can set a bigger goal, like instead of um, 32, if I set it to 52, then obviously it will be like less than 70%, right? It should it should show red color indicator. So here if you see, the status expression will take the current value and the goal value you set, and it will be evaluating the indicator signal, like whether it's performing good or not. The pictorial representation of the indicators will help the users to understand easily, okay, this is good, this is bad, I mean this is not performing good, and so on, instead of manually analyzing, okay, the value is 30,000, let's say the goal is 35,000. They have to do it manually, right? Instead of that, this helps in understanding the things pretty easily. So let me go with North America, and it is red because it is less than 70% of the goal that you have set. So this is how the status expression works. And now let's see the trend expression. We have a trend expression which we can set to compare the current year values to the previous year values and see how it is performing. Again, I'm writing a case statement. Case 1 is empty of parallel period. This is again an MDX. Don't worry much, ignore it. When you learn MDX, then you can write pretty easily this kind of scripts. Calendar year, comma 1, comma calendar year, then -1. I'm writing the case statement for positive things where when let me take profit margin. Oops, let me copy it here. Okay, when profit margin is greater than sum of these with the profit margin. Okay, I'm checking with the current year and with the previous year, then it will be 1. And let me copy this guy, and if it is equal to, then it is 0, else -1 again. And if you see the expression, what I'm doing here is I'm checking for the empties. When if the previous year sales is empty, or if the previous year profit margin is empty, then it is poor, or I'm setting something like that, poor or good or okay. And if the current sales is current profit margin is greater than previous year profit margin, then it is good. That is why I set to 1 here. And if it is equal, then it is average. If it is neither of these two, then it is poor. This is the expression I have written. Now let me process it and let me see how the trend will be shown. I selected arrows, standard arrow as a trend indicator, and it will be showing arrow up or arrow to the right or arrow to the downwards based on the trend value it returns, whether it's a 0, 1 or -1. So here what I need to add is the due date calendar year, which is used, due date calendar year, and equals to, let's say I'll select 2014. Now what it will do is it will take the profit margin of year 2014 and it will compare with previous year, and it is less than that is why it is going in the downwards. And let me select 2013. It is up, it is performing good, like comparing to 2013 with 2012 sales, it is good. And let's see 2012 how it is. I don't see the value will be matching equally exactly, so either it will be up or down, because the condition that I have given is like that. And 2011 is also good, and 2010 there is no values. So this is how you can calculate the trend expression. You can calculate the trend, how it is performing compared to the current year to the previous year, which we call it as over a period of time, how the sales are for a region or for a year or for a date, for a month, whatever you are interested in. It all depends on what calculation expression you write, and what what status expression and what trend expression you'll be writing. And it's important to set the goal dynamic, a different value for different regions. You should not set the same goal. If you set the same goal of $50 billion for every country, you cannot expect that from the countries like Zimbabwe and all to reach the profit of $50 billion, right? So you should be setting a different goal for it's based on the country. But yeah, this is the basic concept, how you can even the value expression, you can take a bigger expression here to write the value expression, like joining 3-4 measures and taking the highest values and so on. So basically you need to understand MDX for writing calculations, for writing name sets, and for writing KPIs, and also for few actions you need to know the MDX stuff. So once we learn MDX, we can revisit this, or I can give you a couple of assignments about creating the KPIs, or I'll give you the requirements like creating the KPIs and so on. You can practice on the KPIs and calculations once you're good in MDX. So that's it for today's session. We discussed about calculations and KPIs, and in next session we'll be discussing about actions and the processing commands. What are the different types of processing that you can do at different objects level like database, cube, and dimension and partitions. Thank you very much, guys. Catch you in next session. Bye bye.